Good evening and welcome to Biz in Focus. I'm Zeenat Musafir. Joining us this evening is the President of the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators, Harith Pereira. Good evening, Mr. Harith.
Good evening.
So, to start off with the interview, Mr. Harith, tell us about the tourism industry, how well it's performing at present.
Okay. First of all, thank you MTV for having us.
Welcome.
Well, as you know, 21st April was a very sad day for Sri Lanka and for tourism. We had an unprecedented attack on the tourism products and tourists itself, where many people died and many people got injured. Subsequently, there were a lot of travel advisories by our key source markets, and that took a while for us to, reduce, dilute, mitigate, and take it off. And some of the travel advisories are still in motion. So after that, we had a very lean period. Normally summer is a bit low, but there are certain markets that are sort of activated during summer times, but business just dried up, and a lot of the hotels, the travel agents, DMCs, and all tourism stakeholders had a bad 3-4 months. But going forward is something that really worries us, whether our winter will be affected because of that, whether how soon, how far we can get back to our normal circumstances, normal business levels. May, June has been a degrowth, and okay. Overall Sri Lanka is facing for 2019 a degrowth because of
when compared with 2018, is it?
Yes, that's right. April was a very good month.
Yes.
Because the Easter holidays were shifted to April. So a lot of the foreign countries, especially the European markets, were very active. Yes. But May, June hasn't been good at all.
So, Mr. Harith, in following the unfortunate attacks, the government announced a relief package, including a moratorium and working capital loans. So, how well has this been going, and from your end, have you all received these packages?
So, we were actually quite grateful for the government to come with a relief package. So there was a lot of lobbying going on. I think the highest office in Sri Lanka got involved in it. And there were 3 key components. One was the moratorium, one was the working capital assistance, and the other was a change in VAT. VAT happened not fast, I would say. It took a while, but the VAT reduction is in motion. The other 2 are very slow. Moratorium is progressing very slow, and the working capital assistance is actually an unstarted yet. I'm yet to get any members from both hotels or especially travel agents and DMCs saying that they have got the working capital loan. And this is now it's nearly 3 months. We are coming into a lean period. I don't want a situation where the industry is short of cash. They can't pay the salaries of people. Tourism has been growing quite significantly over the past 10 years since the war ended. And we contribute nearly 6% of the GDP. Directly and indirectly, we employ nearly 10% of the population, working population. There are a lot of indirect people involved in the whole ecosystem, from the tuk-tuk driver to the person who sends tambili to foreigners to, various people are involved in it. And all of them are affected. So in a situation like that, the government needs to come and help us. The working capital loan was a significant component of it. And I don't want a situation where the DMCs or the travel agents and the hoteliers cannot pay salaries, they have to lay off people. That will have a very negative impact on the economy. And when business in winter is where we get bulk of the business, and I don't want people to close shop before that.
So there was an issue, Mr. Harith, regarding the working capital loan and underwriting of the loan. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So now, if you take, the receipts, foreign remittances, last year we got nearly $4.3 billion. Now that's a lot of money, and the banks have been enjoying all these receipts. and it has obviously cascaded to the industry and its stakeholders. Now, at a time of crisis, tourism is a volatile business. Any part of the world, bombs have happened in Berlin, in London, in Egypt, in Paris, and everybody recover, but they will go through a short 9 to 12 months null period. Sri Lanka will be the same. Now, in a situation like that, the whole structure mustn't collapse. So we wanted the government together with the banks to help us to manage the cash flow, so that we will keep the business, the sustainability of the business, so that by winter and next summer year we are back running again. But that has been very disappointing. We have had meetings with the highest office in central bank, highest office in the finance ministry, highest office in the political system, but unfortunately no one has yet got it. And banks are taking their time to ascertain the creditworthiness of each of their client. What we requested was the government to underwrite. So the capital part they need to underwrite. The interest part they have underwritten. They have absorbed 75% of it. So we are getting a soft loan at 3.46, which is very good. But if the capital component is not underwritten, no bank is going to lend. And unfortunately, none of us has got it so far. And we are very worried going to August, September if it's not activated.
So what do you propose, Mr. Harith, from your end as to how these issues could be addressed?
I think what we need is a clear, strong directive from the government advising the banks what to do, and develop a mechanism where the banks can take a proper proposal and implement a cash loan to all the businesses of tourism. Now, if the government doesn't get involved, if they disengage, and if they allow the banks to decide everything, then the SMEs, especially the small medium, they will really suffer. And our industry consists of many SMEs, and the bulk of the business you take in volume, they are involved. So they need to be looked after. If you take the big hotels, or they will somehow manage. They have their assets, they have other businesses, but the SMEs are at times solely dependent on tourism, and if they are not supported, it can have a cascading effect.
SMEs are the vulnerable segment.
That's right.
So also, Mr. Harith, now apart from the working capital loans, the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotions Bureau is set to spend 416 million rupees on a PR campaign and another 500 million rupees on a short marketing campaign. Could you explain this, elaborate on this a bit more?
It's a very unusual situation. We had a crisis on 21st April. Yes. If you take Paris, we studied the Paris scenario and how they reacted. They were very clear. They had 2 weeks of absolute silence. They raised $3 million, both from the government and the private sector. They hired a good PR company, and they hired a good social media company, and they got the whole integrated approach in how to win back the positive image of Paris. And they are back. The tourists are coming back again. Sri Lankan scenario, we had the situation on 21st April. We are yet to literally appoint a PR agency yet. So it's up to yesterday, it's three months, right? And there are a lot of bureaucracy, we went to the cabinet, we got the cabinet to approve. Still, it's not moving. I hear now we have the industry, especially the Sri Lanka tourism, has seek advice from the AG how to about the whole contract. So it's still not happening. And the selected agency JWT had a very good plan. They had a 45-day plan, a global PR plan, and a 6 months global advertising plan. But for that, I mean, that's the big thing. Those are things we need to do. Talking in local media or having local events, it's not going to get tourists here. Tourists need to see that Sri Lanka is back, Sri Lanka is safe, Sri Lanka has its diversity. So for that we need to hire a global PR company who has officers in the source market who can drive that message. If they are even not appointed yet, then we are not even doing our basics. So the SLTBB is trying very hard. I know for a fact the chairman and MD, they are pushing it, and they have been very cooperative. But the whole bureaucracy elephants is, it's very tough to move the fellow, So unfortunately, the positive vibes are still not going out officially. There's a lot of private sector, individual led sort of PR campaigns which is gathering traction, like Positive Sri Lanka, Love Sri Lanka. It's actually, so they are actually doing what we are supposed to do as a country. So that's not good. So my request is to urge, treat this as a crisis. In a tourism destination, every country goes through a crisis, but how you recover is the important part. If you don't recover, then the crisis can be a disaster over a period of time. So there was a plan for us to have a tour operator. The tour operator is a very important equation in our whole arrival patterns of Sri Lanka. They still play an important role. So we need to activate them. I'll tell you an example. A tour operator will have many destinations under their portfolio. Sri Lanka is just one. If Sri Lanka is not looking good, they will sell Bali or Thailand, or they have a huge portfolio. So we need to win the interest of them. We need to get them engaged. We need to get them motivated. So we have actually lobbied with the government for us to come up with a joint promotion with the tour operators, where we get their buy-in, we commit them for certain numbers, and then we match their arrivals with a payment. For example, if you are bringing 1,000 tourists, we are going to give you $10 per tourist, what the tour operator brings in. They need to match that. We decide on a joint marketing promotion for that, and then promote Sri Lanka. Okay. So that sort of a thing actually will activate the tour operators. It's gaining traction, but it's still not implemented. We are still seeking proposals from the tour operators. That's supposed to finish by 15th August. So those things in a dynamic tourist destination, like if you take Egypt, Thailand, those things happen within 2-3 weeks of the disaster. We are 3 months. We are still crawling.
Okay. And with that, we're going in for a short commercial break. Do stay tuned for more on the other side. Welcome back to Biz in Focus. Joining us this evening is the President of the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators, Mr. Harith Pereira. Now, Mr. Harith, we were talking about the tourism industry and how it's performing right now. So, recently media reports revealed that road shows were cancelled. What's the reason for this?
Okay, so the board took a decision last month to temporarily halt all road shows, because we had so many reasons. Number one, we had a clear criteria what we should follow when we have a road show, how we vet the agents who come there, what sort of message we should get, the timing, a profile of the agent should be given beforehand, so that the participants can do some research about them. So there was a 2-page criteria what we did, so that wasn't followed. Then the basics are still to be done. We are yet to appoint a PR agency. We need to fast track all our global advertising campaign. In a situation like that, when those mega important ones are not activated yet, we don't want staff at Sri Lanka Tourism spending 1 week, 10-14 days out there doing road shows. So that was another criteria. Even the Honourable Minister requested us, why are we approving staff going out for a long period on road shows when there's a lot of things need to be done here. Then road shows also, we go and target the same agent send to operator. We are not going to new markets. How we profile the new agent is not happening the way we want. So there were a lot of gray areas in that whole thing. So what we decided was, let's stop it for a while. Let's get all these activated, and we'll relook at it.
So hopefully the road shows will kickstart again next year.
Hopefully, if you ask me, I want road shows to start tomorrow. But there's more important things to be done.
Yes.
That has to be done, then we can go back to road shows.
Okay. So how is the tourist bookings performing right now?
Well, since April, it's been increasing. It's on a, it's growing, but it's very slow. Unfortunately, the bulk of the summer bookings, people have moved out. They have gone into other destinations. Winter, we are pushing it. I was quite happy to hear that yesterday the UK travel advisory became, fully green, so to say. So it's open for us. September is a crucial booking period for Europeans. That's where they look at winter bookings. So by then we need to have all travel advisories safe and green. But to answer your question, I think winter bookings will come in, may not be as same volumes as last winter. My money, I would bet on a good summer, because things will be normal.
Okay.
But we can't take it for granted. We can't wait till customers and tour operators come back to us. We need to aggressively go to them with our marketing initiatives. So the sooner we do that, it's going to benefit all of us.
So, Mr. Harith, how long do you think it will take for the tourism industry to recover completely and rebound to its previous state?
Okay, so we actually, the industry with Sri Lanka Tourism and the chairman, so we had various, discussions, forums, and so we always analyze a man-made, a natural disaster, a man-made, internal driven, external driven. All that elements has an impact on the speed of recovery. If you take, if it's man-made disaster, if it's internal driven, it takes longer to recover. If it's a man-made disaster, externally driven, recovery is shorter. Natural disasters takes time. So there are a lot of elements to it. So if we study like that, and we studied how Paris, Berlin, London, Egypt, how they took time to recover, we felt from April 9 to 12 months will be the period for us. That means winter will be okay. It won't be a disaster. It won't be wow either. So by next summer, hopefully, we should be back to our normal levels.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harith, for joining us this evening. That was Mr. Harith Pereira, the President of the Sri Lanka Association of Inbound Tour Operators. And do stay tuned for more of the latest updates with Biz in Focus after these commercial breaks.
In the July edition of the Asian Development Outlook Supplementary Report, ADB says the growth has been slashed due to the April 21st attacks. The report adds that growth in Sri Lanka more than doubled from 1.8% in the fourth quarter of 2018 to 3.7% in the first quarter of 2019. However, it adds that the terror attacks in late April have sharply driven down tourist arrivals and will dampen growth in the rest of 2019. The report further noted that inflation is now expected to be lower in both years in Afghanistan, Bhutan and Sri Lanka. Interest rates on savings and other deposits with 10 years less than 3 months offered by licensed banks and MBFIs were based on the standing deposit facility rate, whilst longer tenures were based on the 364-day Treasury bill rate. Accordingly, the central bank expects lending rates of banks and MBFIs to reduce further in the immediate future, and borrowers, particularly SMEs, can expect to obtain credit facilities at reduced interest rates from banks and MBFIs. Issuing a release, the central bank will closely monitor the behavior of bank interest rates and take further measures as appropriate in the future to support economic growth given well-contained inflationary pressures.
A panel discussion under the theme Progress as a Nation, How Sri Lanka Can Move Forward as a Nation was organized by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce in Colombo last week. The eminent panel included several industry experts from various fields. During the event, the Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, expressed the following views.
At the time of independence, we were second to Japan on just about every socio-economic indicator in Asia. We've fallen well behind. From an economic point of view, there is macroeconomic stress. We have not been able to manage our affairs very well. Often the budget hasn't been managed very well, and constantly we have had high inflation, balance of payments crisis, etc. The second thing is the inability to build a national Sri Lankan identity.
The Governor also made the following remarks regarding the proposed changes to the Monetary Policy Act.
There is a new Monetary Law Act that's being brought forward, which in first instance puts this flexible inflation targeting regime to run a monetary policy which will get us out of these repeating cycles of macroeconomic stress. And as part of that, if Parliament approves it, the central bank will be prevented from printing money. That is, to buy treasury bills from the government and give the government money. This is the most damaging thing you can do, and we've done it repeatedly. And if we are able to convince our political masters, then that will be prevented by law. That will be a landmark change in terms of establishing macroeconomic stability in this country. I hope we're able to go through with it. Exports and FDI, if you look at the successful countries, those have been the two key pillars. Exports are critical to have sustained high rates of growth, as I said earlier. And we have often had an anti-export bias in our policies. We tended to have an overvalued exchange rate, which tends to subsidize foreign producers at the expense of our producers of exports and import substitutes. We have had para-tariffs, which have prevented us from taking advantage of these new supply chains, these production sharing networks which characterize modern manufacturing. So in various ways we've had policy biases which have constrained exports. So going forward, we need to have, whether countries are as small as Singapore or large as China, they've had FDI which has driven their exports, which has driven their growth and their employment, their poverty reduction, etc. So in our case too, that's the formula. But there's another reason why exports are important for us. Not just for growth and employment, but also for getting over this debt crunch that we are stuck in. Now, over 50% of our debt is external debt, and much of it is no longer concessional. So us going out and borrowing money every so many months, international sovereign bonds and hopefully samurai bonds, panda bonds, all this stuff, is merely buying time for the exporters to be able to have an export transformation in this country so that we earn enough money to pay our debts. Now we are borrowing money to pay our debts, which is not a good place to be in. We are just in a holding operation right now, and in the meantime we have to get our policies right and to get exports going. Without that, A, we won't get the growth and employment we want. B, we will not get out of this debt situation.